If you've only looked into your sun sign, your rising, or your moon sign, then you are missing out big, big, big times because the thing is, a lot of the key elements are actually sitting outside of these three elements, and you are missing out some of the most life changing key points of your birth chart. Because again, the things that can really change your entire life are literally sitting outside of those three, sun, rising, and moon sign. So today we're going to talk about that because I still see that most astrology content online really tend to focus on these three things only, which is great. Of course, I'm not going to I'm not going to downplay that. It's very important to know all these three signs. At least we're not just talking about the sun sign. That's already major, major improvement. But we need to start talking about way beyond sun, moon, and rising, because what happened is these are all like surface level information at best. Again, they're very, very valuable keys, but let's go beyond that, right? Because this is when you start being very confused about your path, and a lot of time you can have misdiagnosed patterns because you need to see this full picture, and then you end up, yeah, you feel seen, but you only feel seen halfway, you know what I mean? Or you only feel seen like 40%, but it's just like we need to go all in because your birth chart is so much more than personality traits. It's a multi-dimensional map of your soul. It's just absolute. It still blows my mind. Doesn't matter how many, birth chart readings I do or other astrological services I do, transit progression. It just absolutely blows my mind how beautiful and how lucky we are to have access to these information. It's just like, you know, totally crazy, 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 crazy. So let's talk about some powerful elements in your chart that you don't want to be sleeping on. And this is the part that a lot of my clients are they always leave feeling like, wow, totally, totally amazed, and like they can't believe all these information just like hiding in plain sight. So first of all, your lunar nodes. So your lunar nodes are your karmic story. It's something that I think is very important to know about, especially, if you're worried and you really preoccupied about your purpose and you want your life to have a deeper meaning. You cannot ignore the nodes. We have the North Node. The North Node will tell you a lot about your soul's purpose. It's pretty much the direction where your soul is going. This is for my control freaks out there. Anyone out there? Are you one of those control freaks? I'm just kidding. I absolutely love you. Love you, my control freaks. But if you really one of these people who really struggle to let go and surrender, you might find a lot of comfort and a lot of information and direction, diving deeper into your North Node because it gives you a map, like a GPS. It's not quite like Google Map, but let's say it's a very great accurate compass that will show you where we're heading. Okay, and then the south node is actually one of my favorite parts. South node is where you could see lots of past life patterns. This is where the gossip is happening. This is where you can get all the juicy tidbits about like what happened, the type of patterns that you've been carrying, like often ancestral, and it's the place where you like, what, you totally, trust me, you'll be taken by surprise if you really start looking really closely into your past life, because it often tells a lot about that. But like your south node, because a lot of astrologers still don't like using those terms. But your south node has lots of juicy information for you. And now this duo, when we put them together, it really helps shed a light to, in understanding a lot of events that might have happened in your life, really understanding patterns, struggle, resistance, and some loops that you really stuck in. I'm telling you, we put so much emphasis on talk therapy, which is amazing. I have nothing against therapy. I have a therapist myself. I absolutely love therapy, but I feel like there's so much more insight, in our birth chart that you shouldn't be missing on. It's just, you could get like so many, I feel like you could get like so many therapy sessions just by looking at your birth chart and taking it from there. And then you go into your healing work. It's just so much more powerful. So, this is for like, the North Node and South Nodes. And another favorite of mine, dear favorite, is good old Chiron. Chiron, the wounded healer. Now, this is something that Chiron really scares a lot of people, but it doesn't have to be so scary. Chiron is literally will have you exposed. It points to your deepest wounds, and at the same time, the ironic part of Chiron, the bittersweet kind of like paradox, as a lot of times, a lot of things in life are often paradoxical, and Chiron is no different, right? Because your deepest wounds often lie your greatest gifts. So Chiron kind of has that interesting push-pull dynamic that, yes, it will expose your wounds, but there's a lesson there. If you can have the courage to look at these wounds straight in the eye and really dive deep in there, you will often be able to excavate the shiniest and most beautiful diamond from the coal. Oh my goodness, my analogies are crazy today. Like what? But this is exactly what I think when I think about Chiron. It's just, it's so dark sometimes and it's scary. But if you can arm yourself with the courage, it is so, so, so rewarding, especially once you learn to integrate it into your life. This is when the Chiron magic really starts happening. Now, let me keep moving because I could talk about Chiron for like a whole hour. So let's keep going before I digress. But before, I want to say that it also explains deep emotional pains that often feel quite disproportionate or lifelong, things that you feel like are dragging too long. You can find lots of answers in Chiron. And also, it's often overlooked. It's crazy. I can't believe how many times Chiron gets overlooked. To me, it just makes no sense, but it's so essential, especially if you're doing work, and you're very serious about your healing and soul work and all of these good stuff. So let's move on because, like I said, Chiron can really steal the show. And then we have good classic house placement. We don't have a birth chart without house placement. They're literally like foundation and structural. You know what I mean? Because again, context is everything. So you may know that, like, yes, you know your Venus sign. But if you don't know where your Venus sign is hanging out, that information is pretty useless. It's just data that can be useless pretty much. Context is everything, right? And for example, like, yeah, you like, if you see someone, or you might like really beautiful things, not just because of aesthetics, but because they really, you notice that they soothe your nervous system. And then you like when things are really beautiful. You like beautiful outfit, beautiful arranged, your house to be quite beautifully arranged. That doesn't necessarily mean you're a Taurus, because or a Leo. These are the two signs that are quite notorious for, loving beautiful things. But it doesn't necessarily mean that. You can't automatically assume that you or someone else is, those two signs. It could also be that your Venus is in the first house. Your first house, which is pretty much like your sense of self. It says a lot about you, your personality. And if Venus is in your first house, then that can also explain why you or someone else, is so drawn to beautiful things and why it's so important for them. So this is where like knowing the house placement is also very important, because the houses show exactly how the energy is playing out, right? And for example, is it playing out, we know you're still using the example of Venus. Do we have Venus in the house, relationship, family, is it in the 12th house, which is like super, mystical and all of these juicy things? Where is it hiding? Is it in the 8th house that everyone is so scared of? Where is it? So this is why we cannot ignore house placement. relationship, career, public life. It will tell you all sorts of things. There is so much information to be known and to be, you know, appropriated and embodied just from your birth chart. And with our house context, like I said, the information that you get is useless. That's why we need to pay attention to all of these things. And then we have aspects. Aspects is like the relationship between everything. How is everyone getting along? You know, it's kind of like when you have a family gathering, you know that you shouldn't, when you putting the dinner plates, you shouldn't place this uncle with this right next to that aunt because they're always fighting. So you would place them totally at the opposite of one another, making sure they can't see each other. And no, I'm not talking from personal experience at all. But the simple way I like to see aspects, because aspects can be quite scary to people. But I think of aspects that way. It's when you think about squares, oppositions, trine, I'm not going to get in details about that. But it's pretty much what is the relationship, the chemistry between all of the elements of your chart. Like it can show inner conflicts, like, auntie and uncle who don't love each other. They don't like each other at all. It's like cat and dog, or they just and it also shows like natural talent, soul level, like push pull dynamic and things like that. It can also explain why some parts of your life flow and why other parts just like they just don't seem nothing seem to happen no matter what you do. So this is the beauty and all of the juicy details and gossip you can get just by looking at aspects. So pretty much I get so excited when I'm talking about birth chart, as you can see. And then there is so many things. The funny thing about birth chart is that everything is always in plain sight, but like hiding. So hiding in plain sight. So once you start exploring, there's a lot of people who do birth chart out there, but the magic really happens once you start interpreting everything. Two astrologers can be looking at the same birth chart and give you total, interpretation. Yeah, of course, it's not like people are pulling things from like wherever from thin air. There's still like it's still a science, but also like an art, you know but you need to start exploring the hidden layers, like I said, the nodes, Chiron, the houses aspect, and then all of a sudden you see the confusion in your life start clearing out. It's like that dark cloud just start parting ways, and all of a sudden you hear that and then you could see like the beautiful sun coming out. And then all this to say that real alignment can start happening in your life because you understand WTH is happening, So a full birth chart reading can give you so much clarity, and can change your life and the way you perceive yourself way beyond core personality, but also explain some major, like all of the things, the events that are happening, the energies. And it's just, I get so excited just thinking about birth charts. I swear, to me it's like a movie, like the best movie ever, but that keeps on giving. It's just like there's more layers. You can always go deeper and deeper and deeper. So, if you would like to have like, you could even do like a soul. I also do soul readings, more like channeling in the Akashic records and channeling from like, spirits and all that stuff. But you could also do a soul reading from a birth chart on the astrological level. I also like to use both together, but there's so much magic happening everywhere. All this to say that your birth chart is a breathing, living, changing thing. You know what I mean? So really you need to get in touch with it because it will tell you so much about yourself. And it's just, I feel like we're so grateful to have access to this. I think it's really like, like the light, the creator, the cosmos, the universe, whoever you want to relate to, that is pretty much that put this language and this system in place so we could understand and kind of like communicate and help guide us in this crazy crazy, crazy life here on planet Earth. So, all this to say that if you want to have a full picture of who you truly are and stop falling in love with you, because it just makes life so much wow, and you start having so much more appreciation for you because you understand the layers, right? And if you really want to get in touch with that and you would like to get a deep reading with me, all the links are down below. And that is something that is worth so much. It's just absolutely worth the investment just so you could really understand and discover your true self like never before. So definitely do check that out. You don't want to miss on it. And check out the next video in this playlist. And I will see you in the next one.